Everybody, welcome to one of our quick hits. What we're going to do today is something a little bit different than we normally do. We're just going to have fun. We're going to ask some questions and get some responses from Dr. Todd here and just have a little good time with it.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous. So it's funny because a lot of these questions I'm sure are going to be things I get asked every day because these were kind of quick hitting, frequently asked questions that came through, whether patients have asked them or that we received via email or comprised from the community. But so I'm going to guess I've answered most of these at times, but I've never answered them with a camera on. So bear with us. Hopefully the answers make sense. And hopefully we don't have to edit too much. But anyway.
Fair enough. All right. Well, let's start with the first one. Can you really sweat out toxins?
Oh, good question. No, I guess.
What? Come on.
In the simplest,
have a little fun in the sauna.
I know. In the simplest of terms, no. No, your kidneys and your liver do that.
Okay.
So no, no evidence to suggest that, say, sweating it out, even though it's a commonly used expression, and even though exercise is very good for everything, you're not really going to sweat out the toxins. No, what you're sweating out really is salt, chloride, sodium chloride, or I'm sorry, mostly the sodium. But yeah, anyway, good question, wherever that came from, but no, it can't, sauna's not going to cure anything, besides maybe just, I don't know, post-workout recovery or something.
Fair enough. Yeah. Now, it seems like a few of these are going to be relating to sickness. Like, for example, is the whole phrase to starve a fever, to feed a cold. Is there any validity to that? Is that good advice, or is that just like that's a fun wives' tale? But no, that is nothing.
Yeah, also a fun wives' tale. Yeah, because I've heard that too come from patients. And again, sorry to bust anybody's bubble, but the answer is no. You cannot starve out a fever. You should absolutely eat, and to the point that you can. I mean, if you're ill. One of the things this is probably pretty commonly known, but one of the things you often hear in the medical field from nurses or doctors is stay hydrated, rest, eat what you can. And so oftentimes when patients are in the hospital very sick, and oftentimes their appetites are decreased because they're quite sick, or maybe they're at risk of aspirating because they're ill. We sort of have this advanced as tolerated notion. So the idea being that you start with really easy to consume, easy to digest foods, sometimes even like brat diet type stuff, and then you advance as tolerated to get back to your normal nutrition. So no, you do not want to starve out a fever. Take in nutrition as you can. Eat what you can, and give yourself back electrolytes. I think that's also sometimes, we always push water, and that's good advice, generally speaking.
Sure.
But when you're sweating, if you're feverish and your fever breaks and you're sweating, you're losing electrolytes. So you need to give yourself back some of that. And so oftentimes telling folks to have a Pedialyte's
great for that. Yeah.
Perfect. Like a one-size-fits-all fix. Zero sugar Gatorade, zero sugar Powerade. We prefer the lower sugar stuff, obviously, and potential for diabetics too. But yeah, good question. That one is a fun one, but no, you cannot starve out a fever.
Okay, well then I have a really fun one for you. Again, dealing with sickness. Do men really get sicker than women? And I don't mean like excuse me. I don't mean like frequency, like they get sick more often, but like do they really like just deep dive into the sickness? The whole man flu thing, is it to where they're like they're just wiped out when they get sick?
Yeah, so you should probably ask my wife this. So is the man flu real? I guess maybe is the notion of the question, right? So does the same illness maybe cause a more severe case in men versus women?
Or are men just big babies? Let's just be honest.
Or are we big babies? Well, so this is a great question. There's actually some interesting science here.
Okay.
So the answer to that is maybe. There is some evidence that certain illnesses, certain viruses, because of the testosterone coursing through men's blood, significantly higher concentrations than, say, what would be in a woman's blood, if you're a woman out there watching this, please don't try to reach through the camera and strangle us for saying that. It is so. It turns out there is maybe some legitimacy, but to be honest, though, if you tried to kind of study this out over an entire population, it'd be really hard to throw a blanket out there.
And get consistent answers across the board.
Exactly. Right. But with that said, every time I get sick, I oftentimes tell my wife that this is the most sick anyone has ever been in the existence of humanity, because in that moment it feels like it. But is there a little bit of embellishing? Probably. Maybe. But yeah, that's a good question. It's an interesting question, one that potentially does have a little bit of truth to it. But I guess decide for yourself on that.
All right. How about this one? This is a good one because I know a lot of people, they just get up and they just go and they just start their day. I'm one that, I'm like an old Dodge that needs to warm up. I need to get up and lumber around the house for a little bit, drink some coffee, get the motor going.
Let the motor run for a while.
Exactly. Let it idle, leave a big carbon footprint, that kind of thing. Sure. Is breakfast really the most important meal of the day?
Yeah, these are all great questions, man. And all questions I have been asked at some point or another. Actually, the answer is no, but again, caveat. So I think most of these seem to have kind of nuances to them. It really depends on the person, frankly. So I know there's that kind of old adage, right? Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Mm-hmm. And so I guess if we're applying that direct sort of face value to the question, I would say no. For some people, perhaps it is. And so it depends on your lifestyle, it depends on your activity level, depends on potentially your occupation.
Fair enough.
So to your point, some people, they need that nutrition early in the day. Mm-hmm. They need that energy boost early in the day to get started. And some people simply do not. And then, their metabolism may burn at a different rate or whatever the case may be, or their physical activity may be a little different. And then, of course, you have these situations where you may have somebody who has a very erratic schedule, right? And so perhaps they don't get up at the same time every day. Maybe they get up, maybe they work, they shift between first, second, third shifts, whatever the case may be.
Or they got the swing shift to where it's not a consistent time. Yeah.
So obviously breakfast is going to look a little different in those folks, but so the answer is no. I mean, it's you do what works best for you in terms of getting that nutrition to start. So for some that means do not skip breakfast. And actually, for some, like intermittent fasting, for example, is a common practice. I think we touched a little bit on this one of our recent episodes. Intermittent fasting can be very useful. It can help with weight loss, and it's actually a pretty good way to maintain adequate nutrition. And those folks often do not eat breakfast right off the start of the day. So no, not really. I mean, I would say this. I guess to round all that into a quick, hopefully not too long-winded answer. Nutrition is important.
Not at all. It's only been 20 minutes.
That's right. We're good. Nutrition is important. Bottom line, whether that's when is it? When do we consume that? Well, again, that may depend on your own personal lifestyle. But breakfast by itself is not the most important meal of the day.
I like that. I like that question just because, like I said, I need to get a good start, and with my metabolism, and I have often thought of the fact that. Because this is actually a question I've thought of in times before.
Sure.
And I've often wondered if my metabolism, I have a metabolism that just burns like it's fueled by gasoline.
And I do not. So yeah.
So I need something to get me going throughout the day. Because if I don't have breakfast, I'm crashing by 9 o'clock.
And some people are really prone to, say, hypoglycemic spells, sugars dropping regardless of diabetic status. And so you may be someone like that may need to say, well, even if they don't need to eat, say, a huge meal, a large breakfast of champions, but perhaps need, maybe smaller but more frequent meals or snacks throughout the day to keep the metabolism A going, but B keep you from dropping too low in your blood sugar. And so, again, this is one that is really tailor made to the individual.
I like that. How about this? Are microwaves bad for your health? Is there any kind of cancer risk for me sitting there and just watching my food as it slowly turns on that plate? If I'm like right up against a microwave, am I going to lose an eye?
Good question. So no, wait, I want to think how to answer that. Are microwaves, are microwaves safe? yes, microwaves are safe. And there's no evidence that in, say, modern microwave production, as long as the seal is good, right, assuming that the microwave's not falling apart, and you have good seal and a decent microwave, I suppose. Nothing that is sold on today's market should be unsafe. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough.
And then, of course, is putting food in the microwave unsafe? So is consuming microwaved food, is that safe? The answer is also yes. Now, most of the foods that we're putting in microwave are processed, and so the food itself may not be the best choice.
Fair enough.
It may be that food may pose a risk, but the fact that it was microwaved does not. It is certainly not going to turn it into some kind of mutant ionized energy or something like that. So yeah, good question. This is actually funny because one of my old med school doctor, or we'll say, let's see, what was his role exactly? He was a doctor, but he was the head of our. Basically, we had what's called a PBL, which is a group of about 10 students that get together every day of the week and kind of study together and learn together. And we all, there was a doctor that was in charge of each of these groups. This was a really cool concept because it provided kind of small learning opportunities that were broken down from the big lecture halls and stuff. So, but anyway, he was telling us a story where some of his peers, also physicians, had played a prank on him where they called him, and they got one of them to pretend to be from a law firm, saying that basically that his microwave, the microwave he purchased, and they had the serial numbers and everything because they knew him.
They really took some time to get into it,
to research it,
do it right.
But that unfortunately that he was infertile as a result of his microwave. And that he was entitled to some compensation, but he was going to need to submit some things and submit some pictures and all that stuff. And I think they even gave him like a burner email or something, and he did it. And then so it was like, this wasn't just a prank. Like this was an elaborate. This was like a heist almost. Wow. And but anyway,
that's something like evil genius was just practicing on. Frankly, hey, just a random Tuesday. Let me try this out.
I know, and I remember as a medical student hearing this, I'm thinking, what did you do to them? Like, why did they hate you so much? Wow. He was actually a great guy. He was hysterically laughing about it in hindsight, I'm sure.
Right.
But anyway, no, that also doesn't happen. At least there's no evidence that it does. So anyway, if you get that phone call, it's a prank.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I honestly, when I saw that question, I knew the answer to, even being up close, sure, that there's not going to be any danger. I have often wondered, how risky is the food that we're eating from the microwave? And I kind of agree with you. It's not necessarily how the food's being cooked, but what's being put into the food as it's being made.
It's the hyper processing.
Yeah.
And actually though, because this may touch a little bit on one of our previous episodes too, try to refrain from heating up food in plastic containers. Try to swap those out into ceramic or some
glass
other,
or something,
or glass container. Because even if it is, quote, microwave safe, that all that means is it's not going to melt. Doesn't mean that it's actually safe because of the BPA and there's a few other initials, but these microplastics that can leach into food when they're hot. So this is something that I'm trying to be a more concerted effort myself, because even though there's been no like nationwide ban on, say, or a clear directive and say not heating up in plastic, we probably shouldn't, because there is some evidence that is actually leading to higher disease risk, cancer risk. Yeah. So if you want to know more about that, please go watch our episode on reasons why cancer is on the rise.
Please do. Yeah. And don't forget to like and subscribe as well.
Did we mention that? Yes, please.
Yes, please, by all means. Yeah. Now, here's a good one. How much water do you actually need to drink each day? Yeah.
Also, kind of, I would actually put this one in the same kind of vein as the breakfast question. We get kind of taught, 8 glasses of water, 8 cups of water.
Kind of uniform answer for everybody.
Sure,
blanket.
Kind of one size fits all. That's actually not true. We do need quite a bit of water. Mm-hmm. Is it exactly that, say, 8 cups, 8 glasses, 40 ounces, whatever the case may be? No, it's not. Those needs are going to be different based on the individual. So highly active, highly physical, you're going to probably want to hit at least that. Mm-hmm. For someone who is a little more sedentary, perhaps not.
They don't need quite as much.
You don't need quite as much. The general rule is when you're thirsty, drink, and when you want to drink water. Now, is there? I maybe a piggyback off of that. So, a question I would maybe put back on the audience is there such a thing as too much water? And the answer to that is yes. So if you drink too much water, a couple things can happen. One, there's something called primary polydipsia, which is a syndrome in which basically the brain is telling you to keep drinking, and it's guzzle water. The more water in your system, it actually can dilute out the sodium, and it can produce a pretty dangerous phenomenon of what's called hyponatremia, where the sodium levels drop and deplete because they've been dilute. And if you get low enough sodium levels, say like 120, you can actually have seizures. And so this can be fatal, like if it's if you drop that low. Now, thankfully, the body does a really good job of kind of preventing that, kind of neutralizing that for the most part, but we see it. So you can get too much water. And then, of course, if you have, let's say, congestive heart failure or some of these other conditions where we're a little bit fluid restricted, well, then you can certainly overdo it there too and find yourself, filled up with fluid, kind of like the little girl from Willy Wonka, right? Except you don't turn blue, but it could be the water. So drink. Again, my general advice, and actually, well, let me also piggyback on that. Make sure you're getting electrolyte-rich solutions at some point too, because water's great, but we also need to put back in us what we've lost.
Yeah.
So get a little bit of that, but kind of we mentioned a little bit of that earlier with Gatorades, Powerades, and Pedialytes. But yeah, drink when you're thirsty, drink, and when you want to drink, preferably drink water.
Very good stuff. All right, let's see here. Why is there Braille on drive-up ATMs?
Braille on drive-up. You said ATMs?
Yes.
I guess I never really paid attention to that. Well, I would imagine the answer is this, because I think what you're getting at is why are you driving if you're legally blind? I suppose if some, yeah, I mean that's a really good question. If you were
threw you for a loop on that one, didn't I?
You did. You were. Who asked that? If you were,
they didn't put a name. Interesting.
It's weird.
It's weird.
Was the name Phil?
It doesn't even say anonymous. It's just there's nothing there.
Just P. So if you're visually impaired to the point where maybe you could still drive, maybe you have a hard time seeing up close. Again, this is all really nuanced because my guess is you probably shouldn't be driving still, but perhaps you utilize Braille, but maybe you still see. I don't know. I mean, either that or you got the passenger getting out and walking around. But that seems cruel.
Maybe you just lean over the guy that's driving.
Sure. My guess is it's some kind of federal regulation requires them to put that, even though, if anybody out there is aware of anybody who's actually utilized the Braille because of their visual impairment at a drive,
I would like to know that.
I would like to know that.
I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
I just...
That's a good question. So I guess I don't know.
I'm just imagining some guy that, you know what, I could read this.
Well, if you want to, maybe it's for people to practice, or something like that.
There you go. They're not looking, but they know exactly how to enter in their code. Look at this. I'm looking at you, but I'm typing in my stuff, man. Don't look at my code. All right. I think we got one more here, and it's kind of a silly one as well, but I really do like this one. Is the 5-second rule real?
Oh, I wish it was. I've applied it.
You love eating food off the floor.
Yeah, I've applied it many times in my life. Pick it up. It looks okay. Blow it off. No, it's not real. Bacteria can transfer immediately. So no, there's no such thing as a 5-second rule. Please, by the way, if you work in fast food or something, don't ever apply this.
Never ever.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're at home and you want to take that, you want to roll the dice, I guess go ahead and roll it. But no, 5-second rule does not exist.
I remember seeing that in the movie Waiting, to where he dropped the steak.
That's what made me think
of it.
Yeah.
5-second rule.
That's what made me think of it. And actually, well, gosh, okay, I'll keep some of those stories to ourselves for now. But I worked at a bakery, and but no, trust me, for anyone out there who's worried, never did I drop food and pick it up and serve it or whatever.
Just kicked it on our table, left it there for a couple weeks.
Right, to acquire ants.
Mm-hmm.
But I could say there's definitely jokes and things that are kind of hurled back and forth in those settings with your coworkers, and it's like, oh, is it good? I actually will give you an example where it's just kind of funny because I worked in a bakery, right? So we made muffins and cakes and all that stuff. And so I remember one time actually the mixer who was mixing up the batter at the moment for muffins actually cut himself and bled into the batter. Now he noticed it, right? Like it was obvious, and we clearly pitched the batter. So
right.
Don't
got to start all the way over.
Right. Like you clean everything, you sanitize everything. There's absolutely no blood getting into food that day. But the joke was, well, that might bake out. Maybe like, well, does blood bake out?
Yeah, just cut off that section and just throw that section away.
Right. But no. I bring that up just as a purely joke. Please, nobody take that serious as if we actually would do that. I hope to goodness that nobody out there would. But anyway, yeah, we're talking. Yeah, 5 second rule. No,
not a real thing. Not a real thing. But by all means, if you're at home and that's just your thing, like off the floor, sure, why not?
That's right. Roll the dice.
It works for the dogs.
There you go. You have your home disposal system right there.
Exactly.
I got one for you, Phil. So this is
Go ahead.
This is something I thought would be fun to throw in here. That is when a doctor is listening to your chest at your physical or office visit, and they have their stethoscope and they're poking around. Why does the doctor point it at different spots on your chest? What are they actually doing? Do you have any idea?
I'm wondering why you're asking me because you're the doctor.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm setting it up. So,
I have wondered that.
Sure.
And I figured they weren't necessarily listening to the heartbeat at that point, especially when they're going around the back and they're asking you to take the deep breaths.
Sure.
So I figured it was more listening to breathing than the heartbeat itself.
Listening to different things for sure. So the reason I brought this up is because I actually had just had a patient ask me this last week. I was listening to the chest and I was moving my stethoscope around. And he's a funny guy. He's a jokester. And he goes, Doc, are you trying to figure out what I had for lunch or are you listening to my heart?
This was not me, by the way.
No, this was not Phil. But so anyway, I explained to him what I'm going to explain to you now. So the reason we put it at different spots on the chest is actually because it's easier to hear certain heart sounds based on the location, specifically the valves, because you have 4 valves in the heart, your mitral valve, your tricuspid valve, your aortic valve, your pulmonary valve. And these valves open up to allow blood to expel. Well, actually, 2 of them allow blood to expel the heart, and then 2 of them do not. But anyway, the point is these valves open and close, open and close. And if you have a murmur, for example, maybe this is a quick 20-second, what is a murmur, right? So a murmur is any additional sound as you're listening to the heart. And really it's sound that as the blood is flowing over top of those valves. If we hear any additional sounds, that's by definition a murmur. And so when you're listening, say, on this side of the heart or this side of the chest, this is actually more kind of getting into the aortic valve. When you're over here, this is kind of getting more into the pulmonic valve. If you go down a little bit, you're kind of getting into that tricuspid valve. And then sometimes if you want to go all the way over here, up under the armpit here, actually it's probably the easiest place to hear a mitral valve. And so as the doctor's pointing it around, they're not just bored and trying to confuse you. They're actually trying to hear, because I will tell you, a soft murmur may not be heard at all points of the heart or of the chest. So, I've put a stethoscope here, heard a murmur, switched to here, didn't hear it, switched to here, didn't hear it, put it back here, heard it. Now, a bad enough murmur, a big enough murmur, you're probably going to hear, frankly, the joke is you hear it when you walk in the room, but point is, anywhere in the chest you're going to hear that.
Right.
But subtle murmurs you may only hear there. So
interesting.
So that is, I thought, something that maybe I hope some people find interesting. So we're not just, it's not just guessing, where to put a stethoscope. The back is primarily the lungs. When we say, hey, take a big deep breath, we're trying to listen to the different lobes of the lungs. You also do listen. You can hear the lungs a little bit in the front, but this is mostly the heart.
Makes sense.
So that's one, and then I think one more I will throw out, one more real quick one because I got asked this also about 2 weeks ago.
All right, go for it.
I thought it was a good question. Is pneumonia contagious?
Interesting.
So good question.
That is a good question.
And I would thank the person who asked it, but they're a patient, and there's this thing called HIPAA. So, but what I will say is, so it kind of depends, right? So maybe not a quick, easy one, yes or no, but depends. When most people have pneumonia, what we usually think about as pneumonia, particularly in the elderly, is usually a bacterial pneumonia caused by something called pneumococcal pneumonia. And even though bacteria is in theory contagious, it's mostly going to impact those who are immunocompromised of some capacity. So hence, as we age. So generally speaking, if you're around those folks, you're probably not getting it. The ability to transmit's pretty low in that setting. Again, not zero. So is it contagious? Yeah, technically. Is it very contagious? Probably not. Now, viral pneumonias, these are more contagious. These are the pneumonias maybe more the younger folks get, walking pneumonias and things like that. They can be caused by any virus, flu, COVID, mycoplasma pneumonia. These are contagious. These are fairly contagious, but they may not cause a pneumonia in every person who gets it. So, you catch a bug that may give you a pneumonia. I may catch it, and it simply causes me to have maybe a
sinus infection or something.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's not. So even though it's contagious, it may not necessarily cause pneumonia. And then the third version of pneumonia, sometimes we'll see it's less common, would be like a fungal pneumonia. And so this is not contagious. You're not going to transmit fungal infection like that. But this is fairly uncommon. Aspergillosis.
I actually haven't even heard of fungal pneumonia, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's exactly. Most people probably won't. I mean, I frankly, I only diagnose a handful, if that, a year.
Okay.
Now, my good buddy who's an infectious disease doctor, he's probably seen a little bit more of it than I have. But yeah, pretty uncommon. But I suppose it's something you go looking for if someone's not responding to treatment. So maybe worth keeping in mind. So yeah, anyway, those are two that I thought of.
Those are good questions. They really are.
This was a fun episode. We should
really
do this again sometime.
I think we'll do these a few more. I'd love to hear some of your questions. By all means, comment, write in. We'd love to hear, and we'd love to ask the questions for you and see what we can come up with.
Yeah.
But until the next quick hitter, I'm Phil.
I'm Dr. Todd.
And live well.
Live well.